Welcome back, beautiful souls. It has been a minute, exactly 10 days since I posted my last video. So welcome back to November's series entitled The Narcissist Declassified. I'm this channel's host, Claudia Cauterucci. I'm a psychotherapist. I'm an author. I'm a psychospiritual coach, and I'm the creator of the dynamic Re-Evolution curriculum. So the views and the comments and the questions are growing every single week. And remember, your numbers are my numbers. Thank you so much. And before you even watch this video, go ahead and like, subscribe, share, do your thing. Hit that notification button so that we really get this information across to everyone who might be going through exactly this. It's a big, big thank you for making my numbers and your numbers and pushing this algorithm more and more and more. We're co-working because the work you're doing by learning, by sharing, by writing down your notes is part of a way bigger movement, and it's a collective healing. That's my jam. I want to be known for that. I want to be known for spreading the word about our ability, our capacity to heal no matter the past we've come from. Because the only way to start a new life is to heal the path that brought us here in the first place, to this very moment. From the personal nervous system to the family nervous system to the collective nervous system. Remember, all is in the small, and the small is in the all. That's how I approach all the topics that I cover on this channel. Even though it's December, this November series has had two intentions: to announce the launch of my new book with my co-author Grace Being, Healing from Narcissistic Abuse, Rebuild from Relationship Trauma, and Find Your Light Again. It's out on Amazon, and I'll put the link in the comments. It's a personal recounting of Grace's story in terms of an abusive relationship with a narcissist, and I chime in with psychospiritual insight along the way. Very unique way of doing this book. The second intention is to expose the centuries-long tyranny of narcissism. It's been around since the beginning of time, and it takes place in your day-to-day relationships all the way out into our political systems. It's in our religions, our corporate structures, and in our lineages, for sure. Narcissism isn't new. It's been the exact driving force behind domination, enslavement, crusades, sex trafficking, witch hunts, dictatorships, oppressive gender structures, and entire cultures organized around fear and control. Those are the pillars of the narcissist: fear and control. And in this series, which is guided by my personal and professional approach of all is in the small and small is in the all, I've used individual examples to declassify narcissistic tactics, mainly the ones that you might never suspect. So the visible ones and the invisible, because narcissism has a particular footprint. It's a pattern, and it's a psychological and energetic algorithm that we're here to change. So listen, I wish I could say it took me 10 days to do this video because it was the holidays, it was Thanksgiving, but that wouldn't be true. It's because I've been really resistant to do this particular episode, which is on the narcissistic parent. Very triggering to me, not only as a child, not only as a woman, but as a parent as well. This one drenches me in the density of the topic. So I do want to offer a trigger warning for all of you that are about to watch this. Because in my clinical, psychospiritual, and professional view, this is a very powerful form of child abuse, period. New paragraph. It's emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, and definitely physically abusive. And this topic is triggering for me personally because I have a very empathic heart for children. It's actually why I could never be a child psychologist, believe it or not. I would not be able to contain my boundary as a psychotherapist, which is why I'm so grateful. If any of you are psychologists or psychotherapists to children, I thank you. I thank you that you're doing the work that feels very hard for me to do. I can do the work with the adults who might have experienced this in their childhood, but it's extremely hard for me to do it with children because it's very hard for me. I can't hold the boundary that is necessary to do psychotherapeutic work with children who are under this type of situation. And that's the truth. I'm being very vulnerable here. But I've always been thankful about what I call the parts of the body, which means that the things that I don't do, you are doing, or they are doing, or they are doing. And this massive, massive shout out to people who work with children under this particular nefarious paradigm. Having said that, everything that I do, my Heaven on Earth podcast, this channel, everything, I stipulate that we cannot emotionally or spiritually bypass darkness. We cannot get to the other side and reach the rainbow and the treasure chest of gold in ourselves and in the collective unless we really do work on the shadow part of the human and of humanity. So I am compelled, called, and mission driven to expose the shadow in order for us to heal it, interrupt it, and protect future generations from it. So sit down wherever you are all around the globe, because this is a humanity issue. This is for people everywhere, on every continent. If you haven't experienced it, you have seen it. You have seen it in a supermarket, you've seen it on TV, you've seen it in your house, you saw it during the holidays. You saw this play out. The first thing I want to talk about is a disorder that's called Munchausen-by-Proxy. I'm going to repeat that. Munchausen-by-Proxy. And this is the concept that will frame this entire conversation today. And I want to remind you that I work in energetics, that I believe that the abuse is not only physical, it's energetic, it's invisible, which is why it can be so hidden for so long. And I have a million missions. I know you know that, but one of them is to make all of us appreciate and acknowledge that we communicate through energy as humans, and also acknowledge that we can be exploited through energy. And I'll explain more of what that means. So Munchausen by proxy is when a fictitious disorder is placed upon another human that is not real. Clinically, how it usually plays out is that the caregiver, usually a parent, intentionally makes a child sick or convinces the medical system that the child is ill. So I'll first start with the actual clinical definition. So the caregiver or the parent might induce symptoms. They might create conditions that cause sickness. They might secretly interfere with medications. They exaggerate or fabricate medical issues in the child. They manipulate the doctors. They even force unnecessary procedures. So they end up medicalizing the child's entire life. Why do they do that? Because they want attention. They want control. They want sympathy. They want power. They want to feel significant. The child becomes the stage or the platform, and the parent becomes the celebrity, let's say, the star. It's one of the most severe and manipulative forms of abuse because the parent creates harm, then looks like the hero because they look worried and are trying to save the child. So the person who's behind the scenes destroying wants to show up like the savior. And so the child's body and the child's entire life becomes the playground, the theater of this parent. Now, what I want you to notice here again, in classic narcissism, the parent is using another human, their own child, as supply for their own life. So, what do I personally mean by energetic Munchausen? Because I work with energetics, I talk about them, and I'm incredibly energetically literate. And I talk a lot about that in the Empath Leader book. I feel like we cannot move on to a new humanity without completely validating that as humans, we are energetic first. I call these psychic energetics. They are invisible but profoundly powerful psychological forces. So I want to take this further. Munchausen by proxy, what we know is that it manipulates the actual body of the child. The parent makes the body sick and harms the body. Energetic Munchausen by proxy manipulates the heart and the soul of the child. Most of the times these are linked, but sometimes the way that I'm going to talk about it today, it does not include the body. So instead of making the child physically sick, the narcissistic parent makes the child emotionally, spiritually, and psychologically sick. How do they do that? We've been talking about it throughout this whole vlog series. By sabotaging the child's self-worth, by destabilizing the child's nervous system. So the child is constantly scared, hypervigilant, scanning for danger. There's always something bad or wrong about to happen. Through the weaponizing of cultural roles, you must honor your parents, family is above all, blood is thicker than water. These are sayings that probably in their origin were beautiful, but in this case are used against the child. And this is why I want to talk to all of you who are on the planet from every different country, because there are some cultures that exist in this way. So in these particular scenarios, the parents are projecting their own fears and their own emptiness onto the child. And remember that this is all on a spectrum. And I'll give you some examples of little ways that these are done and the big, big, horrific ways that this is done. Sometimes the parents will collapse physically, emotionally, psychologically to have the child, to force the child into adult responsibilities. Sometimes moms in unhappy marriages have the child become their spouse, have the child become the cleaner or the person who does the chores around the house all the time. Remember, with narcissism, we're not talking about once in a while or common chores. We are talking about a pervasive way of being in relationship that destroys the other person or at least handicaps them, creating psychic enmeshment. So it's not just physical codependency, it's emotional codependency. Something like you're nothing without me, or you're my little savior. What would I do without you? I would die without you. And this can sometimes be silent. The parent has, again, a bad marriage. And so the child knows that the mother or the father really relies on this child to fulfill joy and companionship. Can you feel the energetics of that? The child becomes their little companion. In this case, the child will make the parent responsible for their moods. Like, you're going to ruin my whole day. It's really heavy on the child. Or if you don't call me, I feel rejected, I feel abandoned. Some of you might know this one. They force careers, religion, or relational choices. They will force, whether it's verbal or psychologically, the child's relational choices by approval or disapproval. Same thing with religion. We see this with religion all the time, where there's a threat or there's the threat of lots of criticism if you decide you don't want to follow the religion or marry the person that your child might want to marry. There's also a direct and indirect, a passive aggressive and aggressive way of punishing independence or autonomy. And sometimes those punishments can come by if you become too independent or are planning a trip, the parent will get sick. So sometimes it's not as direct as you might think it is, which is why I'm doing this vlog series. It's like any move towards being happy, towards being in another relationship, towards having a new opportunity somewhere else, the parent will either guilt trip or get sick or sabotage in some way to pull the child right. So the parent might withhold love as a leash. If you do this, I won't talk to you, I'll stonewall, classic narcissism. And I won't love you. You won't be my favorite. Because there is this seduction, like with any narcissist, the love bombing of you're my favorite. You're the one who saves the family. You've got it all together. There's also a grooming. They groom the child to meet the parent's unmet needs. So let's say the mother married someone that they're really disappointed with, but because of cultural traditions would never leave. Well, they groom the child to become that type of man that they can show off, that they can take to parties, that they can talk about. Also, but this child becomes a prop. Or in some situations, we sometimes see it with parents that have their children be performers, and they start these children early on. They're 3 or 4. And again, to meet maybe their own unmet need of never have followed their own dream of becoming a performer. So they will impose this on the child. And we've seen a lot of celebrity children have that happen to them. And it really creates psychological imbalances as these children become adults. In energetic, what I call energetic Munchausen-by-Proxy, the parent feeds off the child empathy, kindness, innocence. What does the child know but to follow the instructions of this parent? That's why it's so triggering for me, because the child desperately, and this is consistent. I have seen 60-year-olds who are still desperate to please the parent in the hopes that maybe they'll be loved. Or maybe they'll be allowed to leave if they keep jumping through the hoops of what the parent needs. So the parent will use empathy, kindness, innocence, the child's desire to help, desire to be loved, desire to be parented. Esther Perel just dropped an episode called Mothered My Child. I mothered my mother so that she would mother me, which is classic for the empath. And it's classic for the parentified child. Maybe if I keep being the little adult in your life, you will finally become an adult and then parent me. The parent will use the child's fear of abandonment. Now, narcissists do all of this. But the reason why this is so hard for me is because these are other adults, but when this is done to children, it just feels more sadistic. They will use the child's confusion and loyalty and hope, because there's lots of hope. Maybe this will stop at some point. Maybe they will see me. Maybe they will allow me. All of that is always running through consciously and unconsciously the child's brain. And I find this, again, the most sadistic projection in the narcissistic paradigm because the child is used to stabilize the parent's collapsing world, whether it's external or internal. So let me give you a few examples. I'm going to give you some films and documentaries the way that I always do so that you can have a sense of the different types of narcissistic parent. And these illustrate really well the psychological and energetic abuse parent. There's one documentary called Grey Gardens, and it highlights the relationship between a mother and daughter. This was real. They were actually relatives of Jacqueline Onassis. And what the mother would do every time the daughter was going to step into a new relationship or a opportunity to be more successful, the mother would say, "You don't want that. Are you sure you're going to be able to do that?" So they filled the daughter with lots of fear and codependency, and they would fuse. She would fuse them together psychologically through fear, dependency, and like an emotional captivity. And if you watch it, you'll see even their house that stopped having water and electricity over time and was full of growth, meaning vines and trees, bushes were just everywhere. And these two women lived in a fantasy world, but mostly caused by the mother, who, if you watch the documentary, you'll see that she looks benign, even sweet. But boy, you can feel the leash she has on her daughter, the energetic leash. The most recent documentary that I watched, because I watch a lot of documentaries on cults, on this type of relationships, on narcissism, on even, I mentioned the rom-com people, because I want to track and study the way that it shows up in different formats. So the last one on Netflix, I think you can find it, is called Unknown Number, the high school catfish, where this young girl is experiencing extreme amounts of virtual bullying. Pretty much destroys the girl's life, and it ripples out to her whole high school, her group of friends, her boyfriend. And this is done through psychological bullying, dominance, a lot of reality distortion, because usually these parents do have a reality distortion and live in a world of untenable emotional emptiness. They can't go inside. Lots of masking, a ton of masking. Remember, you are as sick as your secrets. And this is just a web of secrecy, whether it's physical, Munchausen-by-Proxy, or energetic and psychological. Mommy Dearest is a movie that's based on reality. And maybe a lot of you know the movie Mommy Dearest. And what you'll see there is more the classic narcissistic mom who's emotionally, psychologically, and physically abusive to the child and dominates by infusing low self-esteem in the child. In this, there's rage, there's image obsession. Remember, the narcissist is obsessed with what things look, how they are being perceived, which is why there's so much masking. And it's a defense, right? Because if people really know them, they'll find that there's not a lot of going on inside. Although I happen to believe, as a psychotherapist, there is a lot going on inside. There's a lot of pain going on inside. There's a lot of history of abuse somewhere, but that the narcissist cannot go in to see or heal. It's unbearable. In Mommy Dearest, there's a lot of performative love. Parents do that. They act like they're very loving. And yet there's, again, the sensation of behind the scenes, cruel shenanigans. Another one that might hit a cultural spot for people for Latin America, but I know for everyone all over the country is like water for chocolate. Now, this is a very particular one that you might not catch, which is narcissism based on cultural traditions, sometimes on religious traditions. But the idea here is narcissism based on traditions. And in like Water for Chocolate, the protagonist was the youngest daughter in a family of three daughters. And the mother, because of cultural tradition, says that the youngest daughter will basically always never get married, never leave the home, and always be enslaved to caring for the mother for her whole life, because that's the tradition. And this mother is psychologically, emotionally abusive and literally enslaves her daughter. She cannot dance, she cannot be with other people, she cannot be independent. The movie plays out in a very interesting way, by the way. But what I'm highlighting here is narcissism through cultural traditions. Now, this exists in Asian countries, certainly Latin American countries, absolutely in religious traditions, where the child is expected to play a role for the parents. And they are absolutely enslaved. In cults, sometimes the parents have to give away their child very early because the child is meant to serve. There's obligation, emotional coercing. So, what's the thread across all of these stories? The child does not exist as a separate self. But before I move on, there's a particular type of energetic narcissism that's quiet. It's very quiet. It's usually in households where not a lot of emotions are expressed, but the typical narcissistic tactics are there. A lot of masking, a lot of what you look like to other people, image making. In Spanish, we would say el que dirán, which means what will people say is the dominant principle in the house. Do not show your emotions. Do not show vulnerability. Do not go after people that won't make us look good. Do not embarrass me. Do not shame me. And no matter what's going on in the house, if there's an alcoholic, if there's abuse, if you're sad, if we don't have money, you do not show that outside. So the child is left feeling incredibly alone and energetically dominated by either two parents or one parent who live by this rule. What the image is matters more than what you feel. There's also the energetic or invisible leash. I'm thinking of Wonder Woman's lasso. Is fear of abandonment. You're my favorite. I'm going to focus on you. I'm going to give you everything you want. I'm going to give you money. I'm going to give you support. I'm going to bolster you. I'm going to be your greatest ally as long as you're always here. Never leave me and never leave the traditions. Now, this is all quiet and it's not recognizable. There's lots of ways that we notice this. And it's the parent who says, I will give you everything. And that includes money. It includes a child who might have felt very strange or different. But the parent promises, I will always be here for you. Grey Gardens is like that. I'll be the one who never leaves you. So that umbilical cord is so strong. The fear that the child has of not having that backdrop, not having that support because of loneliness and fear of abandonment. Remember, these are the wounds that I keep talking about that have to be healed because the parent energetically is threatening. If you don't toe the line, including you can't come out of the closet, or if you come out of the closet, you've got to do it in a certain way. Out of the closet in many ways. You can't have your feelings in public. So this child finds themselves having panic attacks, not sharing feelings at all, ruminating, obsessing, becoming OCD. There's so many ways that those types of dripping, entrenched silences become the parent's way to dominate the child. This happens in all cultures, by the way. So the message that relays is only the parent exists. Their pain, their image, their pride, their fear, their accolades, their control, their collapse, their loneliness, their narrative. Because remember, little children are so empathic, they will feel their parents' loneliness and they will want to take care of the parent. Now, in a normal situation, the parent says, "No, sweetie, go have your life, go play with your friends, go out there and be great." But in these situations, the parent says, "Yes, I am lonely. Thank you for staying right next to me." So it's an emotional incest that happens. I know that's a triggering word, but it's a psychological incest. I will never leave you, mom or dad, because I know that you're alone, but then I don't have my life. And the parent says, "Bet, game on. I'm okay with that shadow contract. I'll sign on the dotted lines. Don't ever leave me, and I won't ever leave you." So what happens with the child? They become a servant, they become a trophy, they become the little companion, they become the significant other in public, they become a supply source, they become the best friend, the therapist, the one the parent can call every day and emotionally dump on. They become a hostage, they become a fantasy, they become the parent's lost dream. I didn't do that, but you do it, and then that belongs to me. They become the security blanket or the punching bag for the parent. So this isn't parenting. This is enmeshment. This is possession. This is control. This is dominance. And it's not always verbally expressed. It's done through massive, centuries-long energetics. This is why the narcissistic parent, for me, is the most devastating of all. Because we're talking about a true innocent, a child who literally did nothing wrong is actually learning how to do this life. A child who got dropped into this family, this system, this culture, and whether it's adult relationships with narcissists or with children, innocence is their most coveted target. They want the people who look and feel naive. It's also a beautiful source of supply because innocence carries light and purity and following the rules because there's trust. There's an open heart. These are the very qualities that the narcissist, because of their own wounding, has trouble accessing inside themselves. The narcissist can feel their dark, but can't help themselves. So let's talk about emotional molestation. I told you, I warned you, this is a dense one. We're going to get through this vlog series. We're at least finishing up with this profile. Emotional molestation is a term I coined. And as I said before, it's not a cloudism because it's actually a clinical term for me that I created. This is when a child or an empath or a highly sensitive human or a normal human who has an open heart is kind, is generous, is empathic, that heart is targeted, invaded, and exploited. And the way that that's done is through grooming, gaslighting, guilting, emotional blackmail, psychic enmeshment, or what feels like emotional incest, forced loyalty, trauma bonding. So anyone with a kind heart feels responsible, especially children. That's why it's so easy to tell the child that it will be all their fault, or to keep the secret. Or even in houses that don't verbally express this, the child feels responsible for not ruining the family's image. A kind heart wants to help, wants to be generous, wants to please, wants to make the adult happy. Can you see how easy it is to sexually, emotionally, and psychologically abuse a child? And a kind heart keeps believing that they can fix it. They can fix the adult over and over and over. So again, we're portable and practical here. And let's just all take a deep breath, okay? Together. Let's shake it out. Let's shake it out. Shake, 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 shake. Because if this was your childhood, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I myself know about this type of child. We're doing this together. And we're untangling the shadow. So let's talk about ways to do that. This is how our healing begins. First, we name it, which we just did. Name, 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 name. We say it. We write it. We own the truth. Naming is a meditation. It breaks the spell. Find people that you can name it with. Remember, go back to my cloudism, shame shares. Because it's not only you, sweetheart. The history books are full of this. Full of this. You are not alone. The history of humanity is full of this type of dynamic. We're here to change that. Number 2, create distance, whether it's psychological, physical, or emotional. Reduce contact or no contact. Now, this requires support. We don't do it alone. You do it with support groups. You do it with a therapist. You cannot do this alone. This is really hard because the parent will guilt, and you, as a kind heart, will feel guilty. The parent will manipulate. Do not doubt this. But just think of it. I'm not punishing anyone. I am protecting myself. And I need protection. I need the protection that my parent did not give me. So I'm going to give it to myself. I need protection. I need a best friend. I need a therapist. I need a group that will be in my corner because they've been through it. So they get it. Because a lot of people won't get this. They will say, well, blood is thicker than water and it's your mother. They will say all of these things because there's a cultural gaslighting as well to pull you back. How can you be so mean to your parents? But your parents are so old. Why do you pull away when they don't know the full story and they don't know how intense the tactics are? I need you to go watch those documentaries because you will see. And in fact, in the one with the high school one, you will see the parent act like they absolutely adore their child. And the child feels it, but my mom adores me. So why do I feel all these other things? The child will blame themselves. Find support, because this number 3 is this means that you have to rebuild with a new identity. And the new identity comes with a ton of grief that your own parent has done this. Children of narcissists often don't know who they are. They're very confused. So start with things like, what do you like? Who do you like? Who do you truly want to be around? If you didn't care about what they thought or believed or the image making, what do you fear? What do you choose? Completely separate. Now, this untangling takes a while, you all. Don't think this is instant. That's why do it with someone who'll sit there with you, breathe through it, and little by little untangle what has become psychological and emotional incest. Okay? Like this, untangle it slowly and gently. I don't know what number we're on. The next item is nervous system retrieval. Because you've got to get this guilt, this shadow out of your nervous system. There's so much confusion through the gaslighting and the manipulation. And what makes this for me so abusive is that the child wants, loves, craves, is desperate for a loving parent. And so to have to face that your own parent would do this is a re-trauma, is a secondary trauma that must be worked through and healed. And it also starts with your nervous system. Your nervous system has been at war. So it requires places and tools for safety, like breathing, like somatic work, grounding, dynamic meditation method. All of my folks are complex post-traumatic stress survivors. I myself am one, and it's worked wonders in psychotherapy. And again, find witnesses that you can trust, because we need places where that truth is affirmed, because it's really hard when the parent abandons you, smear campaigns you, because they will. If you leave them, they will speak badly about it. When they guilt you, when they get sick again. And the grief work is a very long chapter. The grief work about grieving the parent that you never had. You're grieving what the world tells you you should have, because you should. Parents are meant to instruct us, protect us, give us a sense of belonging, safety, and stability. This is not what happened. This is a long, long, long chapter of this process. It might be a lifelong chapter that gets easier and better. It's painful, but it's possible, because you're not actually grieving the parent. You're grieving the fantasy of the parent. Part of the narcissistic blueprint is that the person you thought you were with was not that person. Who you loved was a mirage. You grieved the person that you thought they might be, the potential of that parent. That's what you're grieving. You're grieving the dream, the hope. And that's hard. And it's to be done with others. It's also part of your liberation and your freedom. So let me say this. This is heavy for me, and it's probably heavy for you. And I just want to say, if you've never heard this before, or if you have, I want to repeat it. I am so sorry. This is a topic that breaks my heart, because every child, and if this was you, deserved care and protection and appropriateness and safety and stability and love. You are worthy of that, and you deserved that. And so this is ancestral trauma. This comes in a lineage. And it's very likely that I have it, you have it, but these vlog series is for us to be the ones who say, halt, halt. And even though I might have passed on some of this trauma to my child, at least the momentum, the reverse momentum, is going to begin from this ancestry of narcissistic abuse, psychological, emotional, spiritual, and physical, to an algorithm of healing and becoming anew, finding your new self. You can still find love, you can still find healing, and you can build a life that is yours. I'm going to leave a bunch of links in the comments for you to have places, although today you can just Google. YouTube University is full, and I call it YouTube University because I think that YouTube is an amazing place for us to learn everything and anything we want to learn. I'm so thankful for it, because people all over the world can get the resources that they need without paying a cent. I'm just so thankful that this is available. So you are wounded, I am wounded, but wounds can heal. I'll see you in the next vlog, and thank you so much for sitting here with me.